you very much for coming today. This means a lot to us. It's really important. And I'd like to pass it over to Anna and Carrie.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. The weather's great today. Really loving it. And I'm wearing a Born Anxious t-shirt because we're all the Strong Mums Club. Can you see it? I'm not flashing my boobs, I'm just showing you. So it's the Strong Mums Club. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Carrie. So Carrie Grant was married to the talented, multi-talented David Grant, and best known as judges and vocal coaches on the TV show Pop Idol, one of my favourites, Fame Academy, Glee Club, and many more. Carrie started as a dancer, which I didn't know that about you, Carrie, and then moved on to presenting and a session singing. Worked with superstars like Diana Ross, Roberta Flack, Lighthouse Family, and many others. Carrie currently presents on The One Show. In 2008, David and Carrie were awarded a BASCA for their lifetime services to music. Carrie has spent many years raising awareness of Crohn's disease, a serious inflammatory bowel condition Carrie has lived with since she was 18 years old. Now, Carrie currently is concentrating her efforts on becoming a voice and a campaigner for individuals with hidden disabilities and a particular interest in girls on the autism spectrum due to her daughter's diagnosis. Carrie in the past has supported some of our charity events such as Autism's Got Talent, yay! Give Us a Break anti-bullying campaign, Autism Dance Day. We've also spoken together at the House of Commons, which was aired on the Chrissy B Show, and most recently we showed solidarity as campaigners supporting the Send Cuts campaign in Parliament Square, which was it June, July, May? I can't remember, sometime last year. Do you find that all the days roll into one?
Sure. It feels like a decade ago now, doesn't it?
Thank you so much, Carrie, for giving us your time. How's life in lockdown been for you?
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I think there's been real ups and downs. I think for us, the immediate thing, because there's 6 of us, and then our eldest daughter's boyfriend, there were 7. So we were kind of almost like a little village. And that worked because it was like, everyone's got special needs. We all get each other. We all think we're amazing. So actually, it was really accepting and encouraging, and it was so lovely to be out of that world of judgment and not having to really deal with, I mean, not that I deal a lot with school much anyway now, but there's just the difficulties with just interacting with the world. That all just got taken away, didn't it? And I have to say, for us, the real lockdowny bit was amazing. This next bit is a little bit more challenging for us. And I kind of expected that would happen when we all started to think about, okay, we've now got to try and work out how we get out of this world that we've created that really works, and how do we begin to interact again with the world. And obviously I've known people that in the SCM world, we run a parent support group, and I know a lot of our parents have had nightmare lockdown. You know, it's been absolute hell, but actually it's becoming easier now. So I think we probably have the opposite of that. So lockdown was just lovely, I have to say, and now is where the challenging bits come in.
Can I ask, you've got 4 kids with disabilities, what's the sleeping like in your house? Because sleep's a big issue, as you know, in my house.
What is sleep? I mean, it's a funny concept, isn't it, sleep? I think I have always known that lack of sleep for me is really bad for my Crohn's disease and really, really bad for my mental health. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I always think if anyone wanted to torture me, just to make sure I can't sleep, and I would give up whatever I needed to give up. But David is really good on about 4 or 5 hours. So where he excels, I'm able to just take time out, and vice versa. There are bits I'm really good at organising. So, you know, our children still wouldn't have EHCPs if it was down to David. But, you know, I'm good at the letters and the arguing and all of that stuff. And he's really good at just staying up all night. So that...
How is David? All right.
Yeah, he's great. You know, David is the most laid back person on earth. And that's so good for me because I'm a little bit more anxious about life. So that, you know, it works. And I always think, you know, I grew up, both David and I grew up with just our mums. And they were amazing, strong women. But I think, I don't know how, you know, when you're doing this on your own, you deserve 300 medals. You know, you really are amazing humans if you're doing this on your own, because I think it's a hard walk.
Yeah, I know a lot of mums that I chat to that, you know, who are on their own, and I just take my hat off to them. I just don't know how they do it, but they're there one day at a time.
Yeah, you get the props tonight. If you're doing this on your own, you are amazing. I just want to honour you and say well done and wow. You know, that needs to be said.
When did you first realise your children may be on the autism spectrum? And had you heard of autism before? I always ask people this. Had you ever heard of it before?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Anna. I can't remember. I feel like I've just been in the autism world my whole life now. But there probably was a time where I really hadn't heard about autism. And I think that potentially it would have been because when you have your first child, you're just like, okay, first child, unless you've been around children. I'd never held a baby before I had my first child, so I had no idea. No, wow. no, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hold a baby. And so I just thought that Olivia, who's my oldest, so Olivia's now 25, and they have ADHD and dyspraxia, and so not autistic, but it was only at school when school started calling me in and going, oh, Mrs. Grant, can we have a word? You know, they're so badly behaved. And I'd be like, really? They're amazing at home. But Olivia's sort of, her presentations were really just lack of concentration, being extra loud, intense interests, lots of anxiety. And she didn't get diagnosed till she was 18. But that's when I started to think about, okay, so there is this thing called special educational needs. I think actually that the SENCO had the ed psych in without even telling me, actually, with Olivia. So it was really with, I guess, so the ages now, just to get this out of the way. So they are 25, that's Olivia. She's an actor with ADHD.
Okay.
Dyspraxia. The next one down is Talia, who is 18, who is autistic. Then there's Imogen, who's 14, who is autistic and has ADHD. And then there's Nathan, who is our little 10-year-old adoptive son, who has attachment disorder and ADHD. So that's the kind of, I mean, there's lots of other little bits that we all know get added on with all of that, but those are the headlines. So when Imogen, she's now 14, when she was about 3, we thought she might have hearing problems, not be deaf, but just she wouldn't answer to her name, and you know, she was just a little bit different, and we started to get a bit worried because she'd always have her hands over her ears. And then we were going to supermarkets and we were potty training, so she was about 2.5 actually at this point. And every time someone put the hand dryer on, she'd run out the toilet, you know, mid-flow. It was a nightmare. So we couldn't really take her out and then we'd sit in the kitchen and she'd have her hands over her ears for the noise from the fridge. And so we were like, hang on a minute, let me just type into Google noise sensitivity in children, and up came all these other things, and the headline was autism. And it was at this point that David and I started saying, hang on a minute, this also absolutely sounds like Talia, so maybe we need to get them both assessed. So I started what happened was, it was really amazing actually. I went to see my health visitor, and just in the NHS, the health visitor was a lady who was just about to retire. She was proper old school. She's seen it all, been there, done that, looked at Imogen and said, I think your little girl's autistic. Let's get her an assessment. So I was like, okay, let's do that. In the meantime, I couldn't really get Talia an assessment because she was properly like under the radar. So we then, and I feel embarrassed about saying this, we paid for private assessments for Imogen and Talia. So before she got the NHS one, we had those private assessments, and on the same day we were told, yeah, both these daughters are autistic. And I think for us, it's a really interesting thing, because I think that often people go through this whole, what they call grief, and they go through this period of saying, you know, my child's not going to be who I thought they were going to be, and then what will become of them, and how will they cope when I've gone? And they go deep straight away. I think for David and I, we just thought our children are just the same people, but they've now got an explanation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think in the arts, and I know I've said this to you before, Anna, but I actually think in the arts, we celebrate the quirky people. The quirky people are actually the ones you want. And the artists that I've always loved coaching are those ones that everyone, the record company will call us before and they'll go, hello, we've got this artist. They've chewed up and spat out every vocal coach out there. You'll have a nightmare. They've sent them to us and I've just got back to them. They're amazing. Oh my gosh, I love them. They're so different. And I love that difference. So, I think that for us, and we are definitely neurodiverse, David and I. We're not diagnosed with anything, but we've got traits. And so, for us, I feel like our family reflects us, really.
So all 4 of your children, are they on the spectrum?
No, just 2. 2 on the spectrum and then two with ADHD, but lots of anxiety going on. And then, of course, lots of mental health issues. And that, to me, dealing with school and the mental health issues, that's where I think my grief has happened, when you don't know if your child will live. I think when you have issues like that happening, I think that brings up, that's the grief that only us parents really get, really. If you've got a child with mental health issues, then you're going to get it. If you haven't, you're not going to get it. You don't understand the priorities, dropping your child off at school when you've got an autistic child and all the other parents are kind of going, oh, Johnny's got to get his SATs. I've got him a tutor. And you're kind of thinking, yeah, I really don't care. That's me. But then when that changes to, I really need to get home because my other child, I don't know if they've killed themselves while I'm out. That living like that, with that hypervigilance, that I think there is a real grief in that. Anna, you see what I say? You asked me one question, did I know about autism? And I've just given you like 10 years of our lives.
When I met you at the Send Crisis March, Imogen was there, and at that time she wasn't in a particularly good place, she said to me, and I think it was because as well you were trying to find a school for her. Have you moved on from there?
No.
Oh.
So she was out of school. Actually, I say no, maybe.
Okay.
She's been out of school since 2017. So we've had nearly three school years. And it's really hard because, we've all got our own situations, haven't we? And I really hate the terms high functioning and low functioning.
Yeah.
I think they're problematic. I think that the spectrum of autism is so broad and so diverse that it's unhelpful. So what we have is, with Imogen, a child who is, she's a real blurter. So that's really difficult in mainstream school because she's going to say, this lesson is really shit. Does anyone else agree with that? And of course, the teacher is looking and thinking, how do I take control of my child, my school, my class, because this little one is really problematic. So that's difficult, but Imogen doesn't have any learning disability. So that means it's hard to meet her needs. How do you meet them? I'm saying it's hard. It shouldn't be hard. I've been taught that it's really hard because that's what school is telling me it's hard. It should be pretty straightforward, quite frankly. But it isn't, unfortunately. So she's been out of school.
Did you get home tuition?
Yeah, so we get some of that from our local authority. I have a really good relationship with our local authority. And I always think, give praise where praise is due. When someone gets it right, I'm like championing them. I'm like, yes, local authority, I love you. And then when they're really crappy, I'm like, I'm going to put you on social media and I'm so tired of this. So I kind of go between. But the local authority have been really good and they have provided some home tuition, which Imogen has engaged with, because obviously that's the challenge. Sometimes these children are so traumatized by school that by the time they're out of school, they're not even interested in engaging. So we had that for a long time, where Imogen, the first 6 months, were just spent every day trying to kill herself. So not interested in engaging with anybody. And then it just started to tip a bit. And now we have a child who is enjoying being at home and being homeschooled. But in lockdown, I had a text from a friend of mine who's the head of an autism school. And so Imogen is going to have some sessions in that school in September.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, it is really good news. But I'm, you know, again, everything that we do as autism parents is we're always in the unknown. You know, I'm not an expert at a child that's been out of school returning to school. I'm an expert at mental health. I'm an expert at getting your EHCP. Because I've lived through having to do that 3 times over. But I've never had a child that's been out of school trying to get, you know, for completely out of school and trying to get them back in. So we've just got to cross that bridge when we come to it and see. But I have great hope for my children. My children are incredible, and they are growing up in an environment of unbelievable acceptance and celebration of who they are. So I still, maybe I'm naive, but I hold on to the belief that hopefully that will be enough. I have hope that we as a family and our community as well, the wider community, hopefully it's enough to inspire them to feel like they can take their place in the world and that they're part of the world in some way.
I'm looking at your room and I can see guitars and a piano. Do you all sing and dance and together?
Yeah.
I thought you might.
Do you know what? David and I'm going to let you into a little secret. We have this big fear that when our adoptive son gets to 18, he's going to be in therapy and they're going to say, what was the hardest thing? And they'll be like, the bloody singing, they never stopped. Yeah. It's so, really hard if you're not that way inclined and he's not particularly.
Have you ever written anything together? Any music?
Oh,
have you ever written anything?
Every day. Yeah. It's like, 5-part harmony constantly. Everyone you have to join in. If you're in our house, you have to sing. There's just not.
I'm not quite sure if I could deal with that every day.
Yeah, exactly. Which it works for us.
So how do you find time to be a parent, a wife, a mother, and a professional? So how do you juggle all those hats?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, isn't it? I think one of the things that David and I did when Talia was very ill and in hospital was we took our work down so that we kind of not job share, but we share our time. So when one of us is working, the other one is at home with the children and vice versa. We try and as much as we can. And also because I don't know about anybody else, but finding childcare for your children is really hard. It's not just grab a babysitter. You know, you might have a child, you know, do you know what? I'll tell you a story. The other night I was in bed, I'm there with my phone, doing me quite happily playing Scrabble, and up comes a little text and it says, I'll bring Imogen home once she's had enough here.
What?
I'm like, it's 10 o'clock at night. I didn't even know Imogen wasn't in the house. So, you know, this is difficult. That's just one child, and I've got 4 that are doing their thing. So in different ways. So, you know, Imogen's a bit of an escaper.
To ask about Talia as well, going to Hollyoaks. It's sort of doing a little bit of yeah. Can you hear me all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Talia went to Hollyoaks. How was that for you? Could you let go?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was like, bah! I couldn't wait. Yes. 100%.
Oh, that's all right then. I thought you might have been a bit anxious, so like, you know, because she's maybe traveling.
I was anxious, but you know what? Again, I just thank our industry for being absolute world-class top dollar leaders, because they, you know, Talia got that job because she saw an advert on Facebook. She went and auditioned for it along with 150 other autistic teenagers. She got the job. And they provided the very best of everything. They gave her someone who was with her for the first 6 weeks that was what they call a creative enabler. So the creative enabler translated between Talia and the director and other members of the cast. All 200 cast and crew were given 2 days autism training. Now that is more autism training than any teacher that Talia ever had in her entire school career. Do the maths. So there's a child that had I mean, literally, I was in that school every day. The school were awful, absolutely terrible. And it was just hideous. All the time, I'm like, if you just make these minor adjustments, please, if you just do them. And I was always told, no, you couldn't do it. If we do it for Talia, we have to do it for everyone. I'm like, but she's autistic, but we can't tell everybody she's autistic. That's her right to keep her. But she doesn't care. Just tell everybody. So along came Hollyoaks, made the adjustments, that simple adjustments, really simple stuff. I mean, I'm talking about stuff like, I'd say, you know, when the director says cut, if he's got corrections to make, if he could just look at Talia and go, then she will know that he's not telling her off. Really simple stuff. I mean, I wasn't asking for, like, you know, a team of 20 people. She wasn't asking to be Mariah Carey. She's just asking to be listened to and heard. So that job has absolutely changed her life. In fact, it's not just changed her life, it's saved her life. Brilliant. But when it proves to me, when the conditions are right, autistic people can prosper, they can do well. If they're heard, they're understood, they're celebrated. And they're still the same now. 2 years down the line, Hollyoaks will email me, is this script okay? Have we got this right? Is everything all right for Talia? You know, is she all right riding a bike? Is she all right with fairy lights? Every week there's just got a question. They're just brilliant.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, it's like Patrick as well, obviously starting in the world of work. You know, it was all new to him at Pinewood. It was a huge, you know, building, environment, all this sort of thing. But they were great. And he goes to see HR every week. He has a chat with her for half an hour. So all these little things that don't cost hardly anything make a big difference.
They cost nothing. And this is why the school thing bugs me so much, because, you know, most of us parents could do the training. It's, you know, we're doing it all the, you know, the sort of 18 hours of the day that they're not at school, that we're there and we get it. So it's not rocket science.
I wrote an article last year, who will look after my children when I'm gone? And it just went everywhere, because I speak to parents all the time, whether it's via social media, whether it's via the charity, like, or ring me as well in the office. And that's the thought at the back of everyone's mind. Who's going to look after my son and my daughter when I'm no longer around? Is that something that really bothers you?
Yeah, I mean, it does bother me. I think that I have so much to bother me on a day-to-day level that I almost can't even take that on board. I know that in our support group that we run, when I look at those parents that have got 7 and 8-year-olds that are autistic, and they hear the ones that have got teenagers that are going in and out of mental health units and all kinds of challenges, mental health stuff, I kind of feel like I can see it on their faces. If you've got a 7-year-old, how can you even take that on board? I can't start worrying about what's going to happen when they're 13 because I've got a problem now at the age of 7. So I kind of, right now, it's a really interesting one, Anna, because right now I can't even think about that. I've just got to keep the kids alive. I've just got to get them through their teens. I think once they're through their teens, that will probably be the next hurdle. But there's only so much we can take, aren't there? Isn't there? And you've got to just space it out a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think it's always been at the back of my mind, but obviously as we get older, you know, I've hit the big milestone of 60, which I couldn't even say it before, but now I've just got used to it. But it's just like, you know, my son's 30 and Angelo's 27, and you hear all these horror stories, don't you? And it's just like, and I've said to Patrick, you know, please look out for Angelo, because obviously he can't tell you. There's all these sort of thoughts that go around in your brain. But you just got to try and pave the way as much as you can.
That's why I think when things like this it's so great that you're doing. This is why we love you, Anna, because you bring people together. And that, you know, we become a tribe of parents because, you know, the actually autistic community, they are gathering, they are finding their tribe. But it's important for us as parents and families to also know there are people out there that are going through those same challenges as we are. You know, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what, you know, anything. It doesn't matter anything. You still got the same challenges. And those, you know, to have a community where you can share these things is so good. Hopefully there might be some answers you know, in another 10 years, there'll be better answers perhaps. But you're right, you know, David just turned 65. No, he hasn't, 64. Let's not add another year to his age. I'm 55 and he's 64. You know, you're right. You know, you sort of think, I'm not going to be here forever.
No, and it's topics talking, like example where people don't talk about it a lot because they're worried about it or doing something wrong. So, you know, I was speaking to a parent about smearing, and it's just like they think, oh, it must be my fault that, you know, my son's smearing and I'm ashamed to say it. And I said, look, my son does it. He does it almost every night. I have to clean it. It's just that's how it presents itself. You just got to deal with it. So, and she just said, oh, you don't know how relieved I feel that I've been able to share that with you, and you know, I'm not doing anything wrong. I said, no, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just that's how it presents itself with our sons, and we've just got to deal with it the best way you can. And as I always say, some days good, some days not so good.
Yeah, and then sometimes, you know, I always think, and I learned this with Crohn's actually, that some days it's not a day at a time, it's an hour at a time, and then occasionally it's every minute at a time. You've just got to get through this minute. If you can get through this minute, there's the next minute, and before you know it, a day's gone. And things do change. They do change. There is hope. Things evolve, things come into play that you weren't expecting. That, you know, as much as the difficult things blindside us, there are also incredible things that happen that do change, that are opportunities, like Hollyoaks. That was totally off our radar. We were tearing our hair out thinking, what will become of this child? Will I be burying my 16-year-old? So it can change. It really can.
It can, but we've got to fight for everything, haven't we? And we know that it's not, nothing's going to fall in our lap, is it? And it's just like, and if you can't fight for it and you haven't got the energy to fight for it, you just got to get someone to help you. Because I know that I can fight better for someone else's child sometimes than I can for my own, because you get too emotionally involved, don't you? So anyway, what do you think? What more can you think that can be done in a society to make things better for our children and for our adults? So what do you think? What's your opinion? And I know everybody's got different opinions and everyone's not going to agree, you know, and I just want to know, what do you think?
I think that I've almost given up on expecting to get anything from anyone. I think experience has told me that 90% of the time the answer is going to be no. So if the answer is going to be no, we have to somehow create something that works for both us as parents and for our children. That feels momentous and that feels very difficult. It feels like you're climbing a huge mountain. But I do think that, you know, I mean, let's say CAMS, for instance, if only 25% of people that are referred to CAMS get an appointment, then there are 75% of children and young people that are not receiving any help. What happens to the 25% that do? Because even those might be shaky. So we have got to find a way of meeting the needs of our children.
You're freezing a bit.
In communities. Are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we okay there, Callie? Yeah? Okay. Carrie on, Carrie. It's just that you're freezing every now and again.
So I think just having community groups, that's why we started one in our house. And that now we serve 140 families now. We probably could at least do double that if I answered every email. You know, that it's so needy. It's meant to be just my borough, but the surrounding boroughs have joined in, and it's so needy. But that group is amazing, and it doesn't depend on me or David. They get each other. It's like this group of people here. You have one another. You can work something out. That's a group sitting right here. So I think, you know, it's for those of us that have got more experience and are a bit further down the line or a bit more that way inclined to lead these groups. But I think ultimately it's about the people in the groups finding one another. And I think this is what we did in lockdown. So we created 5 meetings a week during lockdown. We did 2 meetings a week for young autistic girls, non-binary trans. And then we did 2 meetings for the older autistic girls, non-binary trans. And then we did 1 meeting a week for the parents. So we're still running those meetings now. So I think running as many meetings as you can, just to make sure people are supported, you know, and we have a TA that looks after, just sits in on the Zoom with the younger kids. But to be honest, they just chat amongst themselves, or they parallel play, and they feel like they've got a little community. And our children are so left out often in school. So just seeing those groups develop has been amazing.
Do you think people are going to find it difficult because everyone's talking via Zoom now, and then actually talking face to face?
Yeah, it's a bit scary, isn't it?
Like, you get that? Sorry, because you're freezing again. I was just saying that everybody's talking via Zoom now. And do you think it's going to affect people when they actually start talking face to face again? Because we're talking like this all the time, via WhatsApp, via social media, and there's not that much chatting as in face to face. Like, for example, our events, I am missing them like mad because I just love them, and I love meeting all our families and everything, and they're all messaging me saying, oh, and when are we doing Autism's Got Talent? When are we doing this, when we're that? And it's just like, when we can, you know. So
I mean, you are the ultimate in community. Let's just, let's salute you, Anna. You do that so well, and that really has brought people together and made them feel like their voices are heard, which is really important. You know, I work with the voice, and the voice not being heard is crippling. So it's important that our voices are really heard. Talking face to face, I don't know about you. I had a meeting in the garden. The first person I met in the garden, at the about 6 meters away, not 2 meters. I was exhausted. Oh my gosh. I wanted to go and lay down. I was only about an hour. I was like, I can't do it anymore. I normally have 100 people through my house in a week. I literally saw one person. I was like this. So I think that we are going to struggle a bit. And that's why we have to be mindful of the autistic community as well. I mean, goodness knows what social anxiety is going to be, it's going to be tricky, isn't it? And we need to have real compassion for that and be patient with that.
I always promote to parents, because obviously it can be so intense when you have a son or a daughter on the spectrum, going through the system, the paperwork, the meetings and all the rest of it. And I say you need to have time out. And I know sometimes it's really, really difficult. But what do you do to have some time out so you're just Carrie, not mum, not wife, not presenter? What do you do just to be you?
You can see the piano behind me.
Yeah. I can see the Zoom where it happens.
It was the room where it happens, and then in lockdown it became the Zoom where it happens. I play really badly, but I love singing. So I sit at my piano and I sing, and because of my Christian faith, I worship. So for me, just having that space to sit and sing, it's not about performance. It's not about anybody hearing it or receiving it. It's just about me being able to, it's about your voice being heard. It's just, I need to let that out. So for me, singing is soul food. So I would say singing, I do a little bit of Scrabble if I can escape to my bed with my kids. I don't know about anybody else. I go to my bedroom sometimes at like 8 o'clock at night. Before I know it, I've got 4 kids sitting on my bed. Like, you weren't interested in talking to me until I decided I wanted to go and rest.
Yeah.
So a little bit of Scrabble, a little bit of reading. I do like reading. I don't watch any telly, unfortunately. I just don't have time.
No.
I don't have time. I just don't have time.
Okay.
But I think it's hard. Sometimes I don't. If I'm honest, I don't stop.
Sometimes I hate stopping, as people probably know.
Yeah.
So have you got any projects coming up?
So we're doing some work with the Royal Academy of Music. That's the latest thing. So we're looking at how to produce a year's course, some work that we're doing there. So that's really exciting. But to be honest, everything's been so quiet. I think for those of us, again, in the arts, some people have continued, but, I haven't done the one show since January. And every public speaking gig that I would be doing normally is were all cancelled. They're all in next year. I think really it's, and I do you know, whatever happens in my life, I just try to think, okay, so that's a little bit scary, but actually it's giving me the opportunity to really invest in these kids in a way that, like, right, especially as Imogen's going to do these little starter sessions. So that's really, that's great to be able to do. I'm just going to invest in them, and if stuff will come up, because it always does. But I'm not worried yet.
Okay.
Ask me again in 6 months.
Okay. We have got a few questions from our guests that have come. So, Tally, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Carrie. That was really interesting, and it's so lovely that we're all in this together. You know, we're not doing this alone, and it's important for everybody to remember. And I think calls like this and the sort of stuff that we do, it really shows that it's about community, that together we're strong. And when we try and do this alone, we're literally reinventing the wheel every time. So ask and support each other, and you'll find somebody else has done it, been there, seen it, and whatever, and they'll be able to give you good advice. So it's really interesting to listen to you today, because I was nodding to everything that you were saying, and it's so lovely to hear. So basically, we've had loads of questions, and some even arrived. I mean, the earliest one was the 12th of August. I think we probably just put the link up at that point, and we had a question. So what I'm going to do is, I know some of the people would love to talk to you, and I'm going to sort of unmute them. So the first person that I've got is Sky. So Sky, I'm going to, can you unmute yourself? Are you able to unmute yourself? Hi, Sky. Thank you. Thank you for coming along. So Sky is going to be Autism's Got Talent next year. So I'm so excited about that. So we can say that, what's the date for that, Anna? All I know is
May the 8th. May the 8th. It's imprinted in my brain.
So please, everybody, put that in your diaries. May the 8th, Autism's Got Talent, which is the highlight of our year. It's everything to us, and
our 10th year. Our 10th year.
So it will be special. So it's like nothing else out there. So please, and I know that Carrie's been, and it was an honour to have her there, and it was amazing. So Sky, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. This is weird. This is only the second Zoom I've ever done. I'm not used to this kind of communication. I'm not on my own computer, and I don't touch anything because I'll probably crash it. Off the top of my head, Carrie, hi. What I wanted to ask you was, what sort of advice could you give me as a singer who has never had any success in pushing myself forward to do things, because I just don't know how to. So as a background, I'm autistic. I have Asperger's syndrome. I was only diagnosed at the age of 56, which was not that long ago. Last year, I had an unofficial diagnosis via Dyslexia UK and also Occupational Health of dyspraxia. I have a little dyslexia, and I have high anxiety and depression. Basically, I've struggled my whole life with all these conditions, and I've been told I was lazy or wasn't making an effort or whatever. So I've grown up with a sense of very, very poor self-worth. I don't like pushing myself forward. I find it very difficult. Autism's Got Talent has actually been amazing for me, because somebody mentioned it to me, and I was just so delighted to have been picked to perform this year, which is now next year, but I'm just really so happy it's happening. But that's like a big high spot in my life. Most of the time, I literally don't know what to do, and I see lots of other people who are neurotypical doing what I'd so love to do. I don't know how to connect. I've tried starting bands, to get a band together to do what I do, which is a Kate Bush tribute. And for some reason, it never works out. People either kind of end up sidelining you because, I'm going to talk about sexism here. If you're the female at the front, it's still not your band. You're not most important, even if you're the one who started it. And it ends up with people arguing, and they fall out. And I just can't deal with that, because I just want everybody to be nice to each other. I want everybody to just like take their time and not have agendas. So here, I do this. I just go off on one. I forget where I was going to.
No, it's lovely to hear your heart. Like, I mean, you've said so much there, Sky.
Oh, thank you.
That, clearly you've got a gift that is sitting inside you, and that
I love it. It means everything to me. And when I'm singing, I'm different. That's when I have confidence. When I'm performing in front of other people, I have no nerves. I love it so much. It's the way I can communicate. Any other way, just keep me away from people. I don't want to be there.
And that's interesting, because I think that many people, many autistic people, have that similar feeling that they don't, and let me not speak in that way, I'm not speaking for autistic people, but what I would say about artists is that often it is that it's only when they are performing their art that suddenly everything feels like it clicks.
Yes, it does.
So, you know, and I think that, so it's so important that you must continue to keep your singing going. But to be honest, if you had just met me in the street and you had asked me that question, I would probably have said, wouldn't it be amazing if you could contact Anna Kennedy somehow and see if you can get on her Autism's Got Talent? I do think that these opportunities that Anna has created are really, really important and should not be underestimated in their impact. It's so important, and it gives you an instant audience. It gives you the space, it gives you the stage, it gives you the voice. You know, that's really important. I would say that, you know, for the majority of people that are singing, they're not going to go and make a big Beyonce career out of it, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to enjoy their voices, first of all, for yourself. That's why I sit at my piano. That's what it's for, first of all. If you've got faith, it's for God, or it's just for you, just for yourself. Then we want to talk about, this is a gift I've been given, I've packaged it rather nicely, and I would like to give it. So I think it's absolutely the most natural thing in the world to want to, you know, you've packaged yours in lovely Kate Bush paper. We want to see that gift, you know, we want to receive that gift. So I suppose it's finding gentler ways of working together. One of the things, weirdly, it's interesting because the conversation that we had yesterday with the Royal Academy of Music, that David and I want to go in, basically, I probably shouldn't be saying all this, and create a kind culture.
Wow.
Because it doesn't exist in our colleges and schools, artistic ones. And to create a kinder culture. And I don't know, I used to think, people are going to think I'm so stupid saying stuff like that. I'm really snowflakey and, you know, woke, but I don't give a shit. I want to be kinder, and I want to live in a kinder world, and I want my kids to have kindness around them. And if other people don't want that, they're not my problem. So I firmly believe there are enough people out there that want a kinder world, that want to live in a kinder world, that want to meet up, hang out, have community. In that world, we're going to need singers. So I think there is a place, but I think it comes from finding your tribe, finding your community, and then putting it there, which is exactly, to be honest, you're doing the very thing that
I'm trying. I've been trying this. I tried to get a band together for about 5 years, and it never happened. I found a fantastic guitarist. Since I moved to Cornwall, which has been a very isolated experience, it's not good down here unless you've got money, and we certainly don't have. Local musicians tend to be hobbyists mainly. Now, I used to write music. However, I have a problem with writing music. I hear everything in my head. And I used to work with somebody who could interpret stuff, or they might start doing something on the piano or laying down rhythms. I'd hear the music and we'd interpret it together. So I was lyricist and vocal melodies. And we produced an album which we took to East West, and we took it to China. This was in the mid-90s. We didn't quite get there. And then they went their way, I went mine. And because I never learned to play an instrument, and still can't, I haven't written for that long, and that kind of festers inside you as well because of not finding the right people. And I've tried to sort of approach venues and say, you know, this is what I do. 9 times out of 10, you don't even get a response. When you do get a response, it's always, oh, well, we like bands, because they tend to think that if you sing with backing tracks, which can be limited, and there are good ones and there are not so good ones out there. And also a lot of the stuff that I like to sing it's simply not available. So they think it's karaoke, and it's not karaoke when I perform it, but that's what people think. And you can understand where they're coming from. But I get so disheartened and so disappointed when I sort of find out, oh, there's another new Kate Bush tribute, and I have a look. And inevitably they're younger than me, and they've got the fabulous costumes that Kate used to wear in 1979, and they look brilliant. But being dead critical, and I'm critical about my own voice as well, I listen to them and they don't have a voice and they don't sound like Kate. How the heck are they getting this great long list of venues booked when I can't even get myself on a local hole-in-the-wall pub? I had a gig last year which was got for me by a friend who runs a small home recording studio. He absolutely loves my voice, and he said, well, we've got to get you out there, Sky, we've got to get you a gig. And he got me a gig at this little thing, and that's what eventually has got me through to Autism Got Talent. Thank you very much.
Can I just say, Sky, when you come to Autumn's Got Talent, what you'll find is, like, we've had performers that have come, that they start chatting to each other, they make friendships. And then, for example, we had 2 singers that had never sang before, and they did a duet and other things. It's like a springboard, and other things happen from it. So what I'm saying to you is, I know you've got to wait till May, but you live in Cornwall, and we should have been going to St Ives this year. So we're going to be going to St Ives next year. So there might be a gentleman there called Phil at the Kids R Us Theatre who also works with adults. He might be able to help you. All right. So we've got lots of other people, don't want to be rude, that want to ask questions. So, all right. Thank you, Sky. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you next year.
Brilliant. So the next person that we've got is Hayley. So Hayley, could you unmute yourself? There we go. Hi, Hayley. Welcome.
Hi.
What would you like to say, Hayley?
I'd just like to say thank you to Carrie, really, because it was a couple of years ago now. I sent an email to Carrie because my son was excluded from doing a sing-up from his local school. So I sent an email to Carrie, and she just supported me and said that she thought that was wrong, that children with autism shouldn't be excluded. And I just wanted to let her know and thank you for her support. I did take it to the governors, which didn't really get far, but just knowing that someone listened and supported was enough.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Hayley. And again, this is just an example of, us feeling like we can support one another, even if it's just a quick email, those, just knowing that somebody's saying that's wrong, what you're going through is wrong. Otherwise, because teachers are, bless them, some teachers are phenomenal, but there are some teachers or schools that don't get it. And when they don't get it, you get gaslit. So you start thinking, is this me? Or is this just really awful that my child's being left out? Do you know what? Something that happened just the other day on this level was Imogen suddenly said, do you know what I really hated about primary school? The fact that everywhere I went, the children said, stop, I don't like it. And it's because she liked to hug. The children were told, this is what you should say to Imogen if she comes up to you. So literally, it was like everywhere she went, people put their hands up to her. You think, how must that make you feel? Growing up, this is so rejecting. So I really hurt when people get rejected like that. And the same with your child, Hayley, it's not acceptable to not include a child. It's not, and how ridiculous, like in a singing event, that's crazy. Let that child be who they are. Let them join in.
Yeah. They were actually in an autism unit. He was actually in the ASD unit. So you'd think they'd have more understanding.
That's even worse.
I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. We had a bad time. They had, they used to have birthday assemblies for the whole children, but they didn't do it for the autistic children because that was at the time where they had to leave off early.
Oh my God.
Done at 2:30 every day, every week. So those children had gone in a taxi, so they didn't have to celebrate with the whole school.
Oh, that's awful. That is awful.
But no, thank you ever so much. And thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
That's so exclusive. Yeah.
Thank you, Hayley.
What's next?
Really lovely. So next we have somebody that you know, Jane Friswell from the Ascend community. So Jane, would you like to unmute yourself? I've just unmuted you.
Oh, right, lovely.
Hi, Jane.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, Carrie.
Good evening. Hello,
How
lovely.
are you?
This woman is God. Let me just tell you, there is no woman that I respect more in the world than this woman. The world of SEN. She is the bum, as they say.
Ditto back in bucket loads. Can I just say, it's been an enormous pleasure and privilege to listen to this conversation this evening. It does my heart so much good to hear just how brilliant our parental community and how strong our parental community is. And that's without my professional sort of SEND hat on. That's from being a mum of a young person with additional needs and autism. And, you know, Carrie knows some of the challenges that we've faced as a family, just as hers has too. But my question, Carrie, for you is, given your experience, both good and bad, of the education system with all of your children's special educational needs and their relative support arrangements, what's the one fundamental change that you believe should happen to improve the quality of the support that we can offer children and young people and their families with SEND? And you've frozen on me, Carrie.
Yeah.
Hi, Carrie. Can you hear us?
Frozen. I'm just going to wait like that for you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, now I can see you now.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you hear Jane or?
I got Jane's question.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yes.
We can hear you now, so you're good to go.
So I would say that it's really interesting. At the beginning of lockdown, all over social media, you will find parents talking, and teachers and official people talking about their worries and their concerns for their children and young people's mental health. How will they cope being so isolated? How will they cope with being out of school? How will they cope when they don't really understand what's going on in a lesson? How will we manage to help these children? Now, obviously, the cynic in me wants to say, it's so interesting how you're suddenly interested in how the children will cope, when the world that I move and work in is constantly in this state. No one thought about my child being out of school for 3 years. No one gives a shit. So I think the answer is actually found in that place, though, because actually school is working for very few people. School is also not working for teachers by and large. Most of the teachers that you chat to will tell you they cannot cope. The curriculum is more and more narrow. It's testing. It's almost like what happened was I saw this actually on a poster the other day, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it was, let's collect data about what the children need. And then it was, let's collect data and make sure that all of these people, these children are doing what they're meant to do. And then it was, let's make the children into data. So I think what's happened is we've forgotten about the humanity of our children. They have become numbers. They have become, it's just about hitting a target. And this is soulless. This doesn't make, if you take creativity out of school, then you are losing. Our entrepreneurs need creativity. Our scientists need creativity. They need to be curious. They need to have that curiosity stimulated constantly. So because we have, and I'm not even going to go as far as the government, because I'm not sure that it changes under different governments, but the DFE, Department for Education, there needs to be such a massive shift in the way that school is perceived, the way that school happens for all children, because that is clearly a need, and it's going to be a need now we've gone through lockdown. if you meet the needs of your SEN students, you will be meeting the needs of every child in your class. I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
And it is, again, about making a kinder culture, about having a culture that celebrates instead of competing. It's about saying we want to have communities above capitalism. It's about really wanting to create something in our schools. So is it one thing? Yes, it is one thing, but it's one rather large thing, which is actually that the Department for Education needs to change the remit. We need to change up how things are, the way we test kids constantly, the pressure on teachers. No wonder why the teachers don't want to talk to us half the time. They're under so much pressure. My friends that are teachers work 12-hour days. They don't want me asking about my little one after school. They just want to get home to mark books and create stuff for the next day. So in answer to your question, Jane, yes, we need a very large change in school, but that is about creating, again, it's about creating a culture that really works for all children. And that has to start at the top.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said, Carrie. You and I have had these conversations for some years now, haven't we? And I think, to add to that, I think there needs to be a vision around education which enables a greater level of access and influence in our role as advocates for our children as well. You know,
I sat in, Robert Halfon. I sat in on that inquiry. I went up to Parliament. I gave evidence. He sat there and he said, he's a lovely guy, and he really listened. He said, I just want you to know that my report is recommendations. So it may be, you know, it is up to the government whether they actually take on those recommendations. So I thought, what the hell am I here for then? You're the top guy in the land for this stuff. You are doing a report. You are the top dollar. Top dog. I've managed to get an audience with you. You haven't got any power. So who's got the power? Who's going to make that change? Who's going to have the vision for our schools? I feel like we've let our kids down massively. I really want to see that vision for schools happen. And it's become just about figures and data, and it's got no imagination. The creativity is out of the question. And I think that it's that kind of brain that it will take to work it out for the SEN kids. And we need an SEN community involved in the talks. We need the actually autistic community to be involved in those.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm aware, Anna, you've got plenty of other questions to be answered as well, so I'll keep this really brief. And I'm grateful for you, allowing me the time to ask this question and have this conversation. But I think also what's important to recognise is that there are some amazing pockets of brilliant practice going on within our school communities. And we mustn't ever lose sight of that. And I think our community, our parental, caring, advocacy community needs to be emboldened by those elements of really creative leadership for SEND at school level. And I think what those creative SEND leaders, who are essentially our change agents within our education system, need from us is better connection at local levels. So I would urge and encourage everybody within their local areas to find out who their local agents of change are for SEND, and to embolden them, to actually hold hands with them and to really encourage them and be creative together. Because I think that's the way in which the system's going to change, Carrie. We can't expect government, and we can't afford to wait for change to happen from the top. We have to change from within.
That's, my favourite word is groundswell. It's going to happen from the ground up. It has to be us reaching out. Just to really encourage whoever you are tonight, I don't think you realise the power you have. And I think when we have a collective power, we can influence. And I think that's what is really, really important, is joining together with like-minded people who can effect change. You're absolutely right. Find out who those people are that are the change agents in your area and start encouraging them. Remembering, just because someone's a head teacher doesn't mean they're not human. They are probably just as insecure as we are. They have the same kinds of issues going on in their lives often. So I think it's about understanding. I try to treat everybody like, I wonder, they've got a mum somewhere that looked after them, hopefully. They're still, we're all children. There's always a part of us that's still that child. We still need encouragement. Even if you are the top person in the land, you still need that encouragement. So when we do encourage people, it really makes a difference. I noticed this actually when I first did Fame Academy, was that everyone assumed that all my friends, everyone assumed that the other person was texting me. It's fine, she's doing really well now, she's really successful. I didn't get anything from anyone. No one talked to me for like 6 months. And I was like texting going, was it okay? Did I do all right? Was there, because everyone just assumes you're on telly now, so you're really confident. You're a head teacher, you're really confident. You're the Prime Minister, you know what you're doing. Well, maybe not. But, there's that, this assumption that status means we can't offer encouragement. If you're sitting there and you're just thinking, I've got no money, I don't know what I'm going to do with my child, I argue with the school constantly, you still have the power to encourage. And when you encourage, it has impact. It really does. That's Absolutely. Why if something good is happening, please just tell them. Like my local authority, I mean, literally, people hate their local authorities, don't they? I mean, by and large, in our group that we have, they're just like my local authority or CAMS. You don't even mention CAMS. It's like, it's like Voldemort. So, you're not allowed to even mention it. But, if someone does something good, tell them, just say, that was great. Thank you. Because that does make a difference. It opens doors. It really does open doors.
Thank you. Have we got many more questions, Callie? Just thinking time's marching on.
That's okay. People seem to be very happy. They're loving it. They're finding this so informative. And I think they're all okay with us overrunning. So, I think I'd like to give people a chance to answer their questions, if that's okay with Carrie.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'm a chatterbox. I'll be able to.
No, don't worry. People there's some amazing comments here, and I think it's time for a revolution, and we need to do something, and I think things like this sort of give it's the fuel that we need to hear that when, again, as I was saying, we're not on our own and we can do this together, and we do need to go out there and make our mark and make our stand and say something, and we're all there to support each other. So the next question I have is from one of our charity champions, Marla, and she would like to know your views on Black Lives Matter and the experiences of this in the ASD community.
Wow. I put, thank you, Marla. I think the work that you were doing is amazing, by the way. It's a really big subject. There's a really excellent article that is on my Facebook that I posted this week, actually, on this very subject. And it's an article written by a lovely lady from the Black community whose son, I'm now looking on my Facebook, sorry, whose son is autistic. And she has got all the facts and figures. So this is the article. It looks like
shared that. Yeah, I shared that one. It's a good article.
Susie Rowland is her name. I mean, I don't think I can say anything more than she said in this article in terms of the figures. She gives the figures on Black and mixed race heritage children not getting assessed, and the kind of tropes that school have on Black kids, which is, well, they're just angry, so that's why they're like they are. Those kinds of tropes are so unhelpful. And so that is problematic. So the whole Black Lives Matter movement it affects all of us in every way. So I know for me, when I was doing, I wanted to make a film for World Autism Awareness Day with autistic women and girls. And so I just put a shout out on Facebook, and I had, I think, just over 50 people sent films in for me. And it was really lovely. They did a fantastic group of people. I think I only had my own daughters that were not white. So I think, and I just put a shout out there. So it was for everybody. And I have a whole load of different people that follow me from every different race and culture. So still, I think for us to engage the Black community it's really about more than just saying, well, I put my little poster up there. I think we have to physically actually go in and work with the Black community and really have a sense of the challenges they have, because whatever challenges we have, you know, and we have as, and I'm speaking obviously as a white person here, but whatever challenges I may have as a white person trying to get an assessment for my child, it's an awful lot harder if you're Black. And so I think, you know, the stats are there to prove that. And we know how difficult it is if our child doesn't have a diagnosis. So it's even harder for them. And it's, you know, I mean, after a while, we're just, you know, there's so much, we need so much empathy, don't we, for one another. But this is a community that obviously, you know, I'm the only white person in my house. So it's something that I care deeply about. And I think that I spend so much time seeing the prejudice that my children face because they are neurodiverse, that often I've overlooked the prejudice that they might be facing because they're in the world, they're considered Black. You know,
thank you, Carrie. That makes a lot of sense, and that resonates with me a great deal. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, but I think
it's a difficult topic. I know. I was just, you know, interested in views.
More than we're doing, but that's in everything. You know, everything I'm being asked to do at the moment. I was asked to do an interview for something the other day, and I thought, I don't know that magazine, and I just looked at their board, you know, I looked at their mission statement, which was, we want to reach communities, and it's all lovely, and then you look at their board and it's all white men. It's like, well, and I remember speaking up in the north of England, I won't say where, about 300 people, and it was the head of the local authority got up and spoke, and he said, and he was with such passion and honesty, real authenticity. He said, I want to reach out to the Bangladeshi community. We have thousands of people living in our midst. We are still not meeting the needs of our Bangladeshi residents. And so I got up, I was the next person to speak, and I said, okay, who here is Bangladeshi? Because there's 300 people, leaders, I'm talking to the leaders here, 300 of you. So any Bangladeshi people? No. So you're telling me out of your 2,000 people that are Bangladeshi that you've got, you can't find one leader? These are the issues that we face. If you have a genuine desire to reach into any community, whether that's an autistic community or a Black community or a queer community, you have to have representation. You have to hear the hearts of the people. That's really important. And I just urge you to go on to, I think Anna said she posted it as well. Just go onto our feeds, look up that article, The Boy in the Mustardy Coloured Jumper. It's got some incredible stats, a really good read.
I actually had a read of that earlier, and I was like thinking that, you know, it just ticked every box, and it really did, like, sort of hit home as well. So, but
Thank you, Marla.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Marla. Thank you. I just wanted to say that you know, Anna Kenji and I, we're so proud to be so diverse within our charity as well. It's one of those things that we didn't even think about until this all happened, and we realized that we've got like a really nice mix of people within the group, and it was just, we seem to tick every box, and it's just so lovely. And that's why we're able to do a lot of the stuff that we do. We are trying to reach out to as many people as we can, and but you know, it's such an important subject that needs to be addressed. So thank you so much, Marla, for asking that question.
Also, it's interesting how Lisa Cromer, hi Lisa, it's lovely to see you commenting here, you know, mentioning Vanessa Bob and the work that Vanessa's doing. But I've kind of like, Vanessa has the world on her shoulders, right? I mean, like, literally every single time there's anything about autism and people need a person of colour, poor Vanessa is like, let's go to Vanessa Bob. There is hundreds of people out there with autistic kids. You know, take the pressure off Vanessa just a little bit.
Oh, God. So, right, I've got a question from Kath Butcher. Catherine, do you want to chat? Can you unmute yourself? Are you able to? Because Hi, Catherine. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello, thank you.
Hi, pleasure.
I was just interested in, I mean, you mentioned that you're a Christian, and I was interested in just the fact that surveys have told us that loads of people have tried praying during lockdown. And I just wondered what difference prayer makes to well-being, in particularly for your family, but also for anyone with autism.
Obviously, that's a deeply, thank you so much for the question. It's a deeply personal question in the sense that it's individual for each, you know, I'm looking at loads of little screens here in front of me, and each person has their own walk and their own belief or not. And so for me, during lockdown, we had worship, and we did worship. We have a church in our house. So we've run a church in our house for 10 years. And during lockdown, we had worship every night. We did 120 nights in a row of worship. And that for us was really fantastic as a church. We're a small, very, very diverse, crazily diverse church. And even in the last year, just to say, you know what it's like. I know that you're going to get this as the audience, but there are 3 people in my church that just got assessed for autism in the last year and all got a diagnosis. But, you know, I think, why is this so difficult to diagnose when, you know, people walk through my door and I'm like, you need to go and get yourself an assessment. I'm pretty sure you're autistic. You know, that it's not rocket science, is it? But so that's one thing, a very diverse church. That's what we have in our home. Prayer for me is, because I think it's very hard to find hope sometimes when we are in the situations we're in. And we are in situations right at the cutting edge where the rubber hits the road, and we find ourselves in very dark places sometimes. So I think for me, my faith is fundamental to my survival, I would say. It's different for every person and how they approach. And just to say, you know, I've got no agenda. So I'm answering Catherine's question. Does prayer work? Yes, 100%. I've seen it multiple times. So yes, I believe it does. How is it for autistic people? In my experience, I can only speak about the autistic people around me, the autistic people I know. I think that prayer is amazing. I think church can be problematic for many autistic people for the same reasons that lots of other places are problematic. The church has got a long way to go before it's really ready. You know, again, pockets of great work, but also has a long way to go in many ways. My children, they would struggle with my 14-year-old. I've got, you know, our group of 140 parents, I would say that 135 of those families are Jewish. And we've had families who have been told to leave their shul, their synagogue, because their children are disruptive. So faith can, you know, as groups where we meet can be challenging. But I think in terms of just a personal faith, yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, it works. It's amazing. And that can be another sort of strategy for life, I suppose. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. And what could churches do to be more inclusive of people on the spectrum?
I think stop telling them that they need healing. That'd be a starter.
Yeah.
You know,
to leave the church.
Fantastically, beautifully created, just as they are, just rocking. Yeah, and so therefore stop trying to heal them. I think accepting people that are different. You know, the church has a problem with that. Society has a problem with that. You know, it's like, you know, you're married to a black man, you've got red hair, you know, and, you know, this is, but, you know, in the 1980s, that was, not that I had red hair back then, but, you know, just people are shocked. We need to stop being we need to get over ourselves, stop being so shocked by this stuff and start saying this person's different. You know, difference is great. And I think some of that is about experience. And so I am saying about the church, but I mean it for everything. I'm going to a tiny weeny story. A friend of mine went to work for Chicken Shed. This is going back 20 years. She's probably now in her 70s. So she said she got her job in PR at Chicken Shed, which is a theatre company for disabled and able-bodied actors. And before she took the job on, they said, come and watch a production. And she went and watched the production. She said, for the first time, I realized that for the very first time in my life, I was being invited to stare at disabled people. She said, my whole life, my mum, as I was walking down the road, had said, don't look, don't look, don't stare, it's rude, don't look, don't look. And I think that kind of attitude in some ways has created a culture which says, don't look, don't stare, don't get involved. These people don't belong with us. Let's show them some respect by not looking. But actually in doing that, we are also saying that we don't want to interact. And so she said she loved just watching, and she said I got over myself. I realized, okay, that one's in a wheelchair. Oh, that one's walking, but there's this going on or that going on. And I think it's the same for us in the autism community. I would rather people have a bloody good stare your way through, have a good look, and then let's start talking. Let's have a nice conversation. Ask your dumb questions. We'll get those out the way. Does my child make eye contact? Yes. Do they speak? Yes, mine do. Yes. But let's get to the deeper stuff, because for me, autism with my children is not those dumb questions. It's something way bigger than that. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. It's life itself. It's wonderful. So I want to get onto those conversations with people, but people have got to be bold enough to ask and feel that they're comfortable enough to ask. So in terms of churches, groups, any group that you're a part of that isn't an autism group, if you're part of a hockey club, whatever it is, they've got to feel comfortable enough, those people, to ask us those questions and for us to be patient enough with them to answer them.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you for that. So the next question that we have is from Andrew Jones. Andrew, are you there? Just try and
Hello.
Hi,
can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Hi there.
Carrie.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. Carrie, I've got a bit of a question and then just like a bit of like blurb underneath, but just see how you go from it. I've said, do you think lockdown will have made it even more difficult for people with additional needs to get help and be treated seriously? Lockdown might have created an extra struggle, and overgeneralized people will say, we've all been through this. And then autism and people with additional needs and everything will get the same treatment as neurotypical people. And then I've put, sorry, as a 33-year-old man, I was first diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder 10 years ago. And a few years ago, after that, I was diagnosed with adult ASD. Do you think that lockdown could have extra blurred the crossover of mental health issues and undiagnosed autism, etc.?
Yeah, sorry, if you finish, this was another bit.
I got a little bit, sorry, thanks. If lockdown was chaos for neurotypical people, how much more have people with autism had to deal with through this? When everything completely stopped, our surviving mechanisms were taken away. Surely lockdown is some of the toughest exposure to things that we could ever face. And then with the country in so much financial trouble, is it possible we'll be even more pushed out of society with cuts to services, etc.? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So lovely to see you here. I 100% agree with everything you're saying. Yeah, because there's been this kind of, like I said, this shock of like, how will the children cope? And there's probably a layer of that with adults. How will adults cope with their mental health? It's all over social media at the moment. I also would say I've got a friend who works in the area of crisis in terms of world disasters. So this guy was a bit like the Red Cross. When there's a tsunami or something like that, he and his team are there on site within 24 hours. And he has said something really interesting. He said, when a disaster happens, in the first few months, maybe the first 3 months, people cope really well. They know they've got to clear up mess. They're in a crisis. They're all in it together. They're all in the same boat. He said, but after 3 months, when you begin to try to get some sense of normality, this is when the mental health stuff starts. So I think we are only just beginning to see the fallout of the mental health outcomes from lockdown now. And as you say, if, let's say neurotypicals for want of a better word, if the neurotypicals are really struggling with mental health, then how much more our people who are neurodivergent. So that is 100% going to be a much bigger problem. And the budgets, as you say, are lower. There's also a kind of, at the moment, still a fear of even going out and getting help. I don't know about anybody else, but I've had a Crohn's flare up in lockdown. I was like, I'm not going to hospital, you know, and many of us have left our health because we're a little bit worried about, you know, even venturing out. So that leaving of our health is not good for our health, which is why I constantly say that the help will come really from what we call the third sector. It will come from charities, it will come from communities, it will come from churches. This is why, you know what, big up the church, because I tell you what, those people have wrapped up more food parcels in the last 6 months than anyone else. Those guys, that's not to say there aren't other people doing it, but literally amazing work being done. But it will be found in those small groups. And what one person needs might be just a phone call once a week. What another person might need is something really intense. And so, again, if we had spent the time creating a culture of building one another up in kindness rather than tearing each other apart, it would be easier to find that help because it would be in our neighbourhood. It would be my next door neighbour, rather than having to always access professional services. You know, we need far more listeners. We need people that, yes, train psychotherapists, but just people who will hear the hearts of those who are struggling. And again, that's not rocket science. Not everybody needs a whole program of intervention. Some do, but not all do. Some people just need to be encouraged and talked through the difficulties that they've been facing and the isolation. Like you said, you put it so well, Andrew, when you explained what it might be like. I think you are probably echoing a lot of people's thoughts at this point. So yeah, it's going to take time. It is going to take time. But again, I have hope that it will get better. It's not going to stay in this space. It will improve and we will get through this. It's just this particular bit, the emerging out, I think is really, really tough. So we really do need it.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you a lot.
I think we've got time for one more question, and that's from Joe Bish. Joe, if are you there to speak to Carrie? I'm just going to try and unmute you.
So, yeah,
hi, Joe.
Found the button. Do you want me to read out my question, or have you got it?
Yeah. No. I would like you to do it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. So just for context, I'm a single parent of an adopted child with quite complex needs. Hello. Now,
you are. That's what you got.
Oh, thank you. Now, lockdown was hard in many ways, and I think probably for every single one of us and everybody not here, the hardest thing was getting our children used to the locking down and the being away from everybody. But I'm sure I won't be alone in being sort of quite overwhelmed, let's say, by my child's anxiety levels at the thought of reintegration back into the world at a time when things still don't seem, I might just be speaking for us, still don't seem particularly safe out there. And I was just wondering really if you had any ideas in your diverse family that are kind of working for you, any positive tips that you could share, if you have any. I don't expect you to have all the answers, but if you found anything that's worked for your children and young people that has sort of spoken to them, because I've sort of been trying quite a lot of things, but my daughter's still really, really quite anxious whenever we go anywhere or do anything, even quite small.
Yeah,
big question to end on. Sorry.
obviously for adopted children, lockdown was difficult because it was leaving people behind, and change is difficult for adopted children, like it is difficult for autistic children and autistic adults as well. Change is difficult. So this was for the adopted cohort, though, you know, you're leaving behind people and you don't know when you're going to see them again. There is no finite day where it all finishes. So that's problematic. I think you then possibly, like we did anyway, went through a phase with Nathan where he then actually loved it, because it was just, I've got my mum and my dad in the house, never leave, and this is the perfect life, and I don't want anything to change, because actually this very tiny weeny life, even if the boundaries are like this, at least I can control them and nobody can take it away. I don't have to worry about losing anyone, because I've got no one in my life apart from these few handful of people. You're a single mum, so it's even harder for you in that respect. So I think, and I've noticed, you know, everyone's going, oh, hasn't Nathan excelled? He's been so, you know, he did really well at school and online stuff. Yeah, that's great. But, you know, I've now got to try and get him out the house. So we've done, one thing I started doing is, rather than walking, I know this is not great for the environment, is I take my kids on drives. So just they start to see the world, just otherwise they're only seeing the house. So seeing the world, and then taking those tiny weeny steps of, let's get out the car and walk back home. It's 2 minutes. And then let's have someone over that's going to sit 2 meters away. Having more people, 2 people have come over and they're going to sit 2 meters away, until eventually it becomes normal. One of the things that his school have suggested, because they specialise in children with attachment situations going on, is to go to his school while it's not on, and to just sit outside the school and talk about school, but in situ. So there isn't, at least you get over the geography of it, because there's enough change as it is. So I think they are, I mean, his school are going to be amazing. There's only 18 children in the school and they've all got the same issues. So it will be like a masterclass. They're brilliant. Big up schools that get it right. But
we've got one of those. I have to say, we're very blessed. It's very trauma informed, which makes a big difference. But
tiny, all the building. Think of it as building blocks. They're all tiny building blocks. The other thing that David and I practice a thing called nonviolent resistance. And that is really good. It has this thing of the bottom box, the middle box, the top box. The bottom box is the stuff the small stuff you're just going to sweat that. The middle box is stuff you're going to need to deal with, but the top box is the premier thing that needs dealing with. And that, otherwise you just get so overwhelmed, you know. So when people come to my house and my son stomps up the stairs and slams doors, and they look at me like, are you going to say something? And I think, no, because he didn't tell me to F off. I'm so pleased. I was working on swearing. I'm not really worried about stompy feet or doors slamming right now. I'm just so pleased that he didn't say F off. So I think we have a different, and it's the same with the autism, we have a different agenda, and we have to stick with our agenda, no matter what everybody else says we should be doing. What is my child's top box priority? And each of my children have got different things. So for Talia, it might be, I need to make sure that she's going to be comfortable walking in Liverpool. She's struggling with that at the moment. It's great at Hollyoaks, but walking through town was a nightmare. So that's my top box. You know, for Nathan, it will be taking him to school, to sit outside school, just to get him used to being in the environment. Then maybe asking if I can come in when there's no other students there, and just let him walk in the building. And see, you know, I've never met such amazing parents as SEN. That's why it makes it, or to go on it, you know, because most of us have got so much in our armory, so many strategies. Yeah. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much. Thank you for that. Just before we go, just one anonymous email that I received. Hopefully we can just get a very quick sort of response to this, because I don't want not to, you know, people have made the effort to send their questions in. I think it's important that we respond. So this is an anonymous. So my child is adopted and has complex needs, a genetic duplication, sensory processing issues, dyspraxia, hypermobility, emotional and social delay, and some learning difficulties. He is showing some signs of autism and dyslexia. How would you suggest we get him assessed quickly? The outcome will not change our child, but having a firm diagnosis sadly helps to open doors, support and funding.
Yeah, I mean, we're all sitting here nodding, aren't we? Like, yeah, of course, absolutely. Get that assessment so that you've got the diagnosis. I would have thought with that level of complexity that child would be high on the system, if not the psychiatrist at CAMS. I think there are a number of ways you can, obviously the GP can refer, the school can refer, and I think you can also self-refer. Am I right? I'm looking at Anna now. Like, yeah, you can self-refer.
Yeah. If the person wanted to write into the charity, we could help them, because my husband, obviously, that's his area of expertise. So if that's something that they'd like to do, he can point them in the right direction.
Wonderful.
Pass that email on to you.
Feed back to Anna Kennedy. This is what I say.
That we've got some amazing comments there, and I can't go through them all, and everybody's loving you. There's, like I said, there's lots of love out there for you, Carrie. And what I will do is I'll send you all the comments in the chat, and it's there so that you can read through it, and if you want to respond, that's fine. So thank you so much. It's been a fantastic evening. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And Anna, if you'd like to close, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, and if you'd like to watch it again, it's going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel, Anna Kennedy Online. Just to let you know about our next speaker, which will be Richard Mylan, and he is father of Jacko. You might have seen BBC Life with Autism. That's going to be on September the 10th at 7:30. So the Zoom link is out there already. So please check our charity website, www.annakennedyonline.com. Thank you again, Carrie, for taking so much time out of your day. We really appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you and to listen about your lovely family, and say hello to David, because I really love David. So thank you so much. And thanks, Tally, for hosting it. Obviously, I'm so pleased that we didn't get Storm Ellie or something and we got cut off.
I've been looking out for clouds. Is it going to come? Is it going to come? But we've been saved, and I think it's been a brilliant evening, and it's just been a pleasure to see and listen to everybody's stories. It's been so uplifting, and I think, you know, just to hear everybody makes me feel really good. And yeah, and hopefully we'll see you all at the next one. So thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Stay strong.